All right, Dana, really sad day for the country, and you saw the president looking very sad and somber at the White House, and now he's got a big rally tonight to turn out the base for the midterms. Just really tough situation for the country and for the president and both political parties.
I don't know if I thought I saw sad. I saw conviction. And one of the things he said is my number one responsibility and priority is the safety of the American people.
Right.
Whether you're Republican or Democrat, that's his number one priority. I also think that he was like, well, this is a big deal. And he had just had a briefing from the U.S. Secret Service, Department of Justice, FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security. They are all coordinating with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and also the NYPD, Washington, D.C. This is something that they train for. They plan for. It is unfortunate. The good news for America is that the U.S. Secret Service, very good investigators. Right? They have great leads. They have an ability to track this stuff down. Plus, thankfully, because none of these devices detonated, they have the evidence to be able to look through, find the fingerprint, cross-check it with possibly any social media posts. I'm not trying to downplay it. It's extremely serious. There could be more out there. But the full weight of the American justice system and our investigative capabilities makes it much more likely that this individual or this group will be caught sooner than later.
Hopefully as soon as possible. Greg, what do you think about the targets here? All high-profile Democrats, former presidents, and very harsh critics of this president. Just a series of mail bombings sent to these individuals. Does this make any sense to you?
You could draw a number of conclusions. You could say, well, this is somebody who doesn't like these people. That would be the obvious thing.
Right.
But I would say that this is not a normal act. So don't act like it's a normal act by a normal person triggered by rhetoric. It's an act of terror by likely a deranged perpetrator or a group. But I'm always, when I look at stuff like that, it looks almost always like it's a single person, but I'm a wait-and-see guy, so I don't want to make. I think in times like this, you should have less speculation, not more speculation. The problem with cable news is you're required to fill time and speculate. But I realize that when it comes to mass shootings and suspicious packages and certain events, the first conclusion is often, the first conclusion on Twitter is never the right one. The guy that comes out first usually ends up looking like an idiot. So you need, I think, less speculation is better. But I want to say that this illustrates how easy it is to disrupt a free society simply with fear and panic. One person or a handful of people can have an impact of millions with boxes, pipes, and postage. And it's and I think the upside to this is that it is so shocking because it's rare. And we have to remind ourselves it shocks us because it's rare. Because back in the 1970s, this wasn't rare. This was a common problem. There were actual terror groups, domestic terror groups, more than a handful of them who were setting bombs, pipe bombs, trying to kill police officers, actually blowing up themselves. This was a regular thing after, in the early 70s, mid 70s. So this is a rare, disgusting event. It's an act of terror. But to go and try to speculate on anything without first having an arrest or a suspect, I'd stay away from it.
I think recently Trump family members received white powder in the mail, and then some Trump cabinet officials, Juan, received ricin. But this looks like it's taken to a whole nother level when you look at the level of Democratic, office holders, former presidents, former attorney generals, and George Soros, who's, very, very influential person in the Democratic Party in terms of fundraising and things like that. What do you make about today's events?
Well, when I was listening to you guys talk about the rally tonight and how the president would have to walk a tightrope, what strikes me is that his rhetoric is quite incendiary at these events. And I don't think that this is representative of his supporters in any way, but I do think that there are people out there who hear him very clearly when he says, oh, those Democrats lock up Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, he's not really an American, and these people want to do away with ICE. They don't want borders. These are people who want to turn America into Venezuela. I mean, the rhetoric. And then, of course, he's the one who always says, go ahead and punch them. I'll pay your legal bills. The big problem around here is that we don't want to hurt anyone anymore. That kind of rhetoric, I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, really does invite violence. And then you see this today. And, of course, I think for people on the left, the instinct, and I think it's a mistake, would be to jump and say, I know exactly the source of this. The fact
but you just did.
No, I didn't.
You just said it's rhetoric.
No, I said that what you see at those rallies, and I think that you and Dana both spoke to this, At times, he uses fear to stir his base.
So you're implying that caused this?
No, I'm implying that that is the environment, Greg, that we live in today in the United States. And I think it's the one that paints our political opponents as people who are not Americans, not patriots, not worthy. And I think then it invites the kind of lone actor, someone who may be deranged, to engage in this very destructive behavior.
Well, Emily, do you draw a line between the president's rhetoric and today's events?
I do think, with all due respect, Juan, that it's a bit irresponsible to directly make that assumption, to make that tie that rhetoric caused this. Just recently, we had a former Democratic staffer that was arrested, charged with multiple felonies for doxing 3 GOP senators. Certainly, you can't isolate not only the rhetoric, but also the actual acts. And that brings me to my next point, which is that we shouldn't isolate this, or we should include a larger spectrum of what this act means. And by that, so this was, there was an explosive device. There was also powder, as you pointed out. That's kind of two different things. When I got my death threat as a federal acting director, I was able to call in FPS, Federal Protective Service, OPD. I mean, they were at that guy's doorstep within 30 minutes. And my point is that the resources, there's a whole spectrum of them dedicated to ensuring that nothing does fall within the cracks, and that they treat every threat, you know, the word credible threat, that's a misnomer. Every threat is credible. Nothing is isolated or ignored, because all it takes is one, and that speaks to the integrity of the Secret Service, and as well as the FBI and the other agencies.
Yeah, the Secret Service did an excellent job today and continue to do an excellent job. And we're going to be following the story, more breaking news on the suspicious packages ahead.